the Storytellers Showcase. We are here to showcase another storyteller and another dear friend of mine. This is Ed Lewis. And Ed, welcome to the show. Let me just ask you, when did you first get involved in storytelling?
Well, in thinking on that question, it really started when I was about 8 years old, when we would get together, us boys, and we would camp out in our parents' backyard, and we would tell ghost stories and scare the living crap out of all of us. And I think that was the beginning of my enjoyment of doing that, being scared and having fun with my buddies.
Oh, wonderful. And somehow that evolved into telling stories for audiences, which I've seen you do many times. How did that come about?
Well, after I got drafted during the Vietnam War, and when I finished, I spent a couple of years backpacking around the world, meeting all kinds of interesting people and having amazing adventures. And when I came back with a new appreciation for what I wanted to do with my life. So I had a business degree before that, but now I decided I'm going to go into teaching. So I explored being a preschool teacher, elementary school teacher, high school, college. And while I was getting a master's degree, I went to a college in Southern California, and I worked as a preschool teacher in a college child development lab school for 10 years while I was getting my master's,
Wow.
one class at a time. And that's where storytelling really came from workshops that I attended, some excellent storytellers I heard, because I was reading books to children, helping them with literacy, but I found that storytelling was such a vivid experience for the kids, and it wasn't, they would use their own imagination. And then I learned about doing storytelling with children and helping them develop their stories, and then that just took off from there as far as working with children. And then I became a college professor of child development, and then I taught students how to use storytelling, and found out about the Bay Area Storytelling Festival and adult storytelling, and then from there I just became a groupie, attending everything I could.
I know how you do. I know how you travel, and you just made a practically United States tour, stopping and schmoozing with storytellers and going to storytelling events all over. And I admire you for your involvement in the craft of storytelling and how many great storytellers you know and how many great places you've told and listened. So, which brings me to, I don't know if we've already answered it, but what are you doing today with your storytelling?
Well, today I still tell the children. Like yesterday, I went into a preschool with 2.5 to 5-year-old children and did 40 minutes of storytelling, puppetry, music, and movement. So I do that traveling whenever I travel, but then I connect with adult story swap groups and either do it on Zoom, or if I'm traveling somewhere, I'll do it in person, which of course I prefer. And I meet all these amazing storytellers. And then on Zoom now, so I have a new story that I've written. I try it out at our local Sacramento Storytellers Guild. I used to do it at the Foothill. I could workshop it again in Chennai, India, or one I really enjoy is Cornwall, England, and the East Coast. I mean, just Montreal, all kinds of places. Then I get to practice my story and get feedback, and I hear all these great storytellers, and then I get new ideas.
Wow, good for you.
And I'm a board member of the Storytelling Association of California, and I produce an event called Genre Storytelling, where every month we do a different genre, and I'm going to be asking you about being a teller at one of those.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for being here. And folks, without further ado, here's some storytelling from Ed Lewis, one of my favorite storytellers. Take it away, Ed.
All right, thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you for listening to my stories. I'm going to tell you two different kinds of stories. One's a true personal story, and one's a tall tale with some true personal mixed in there. And I'm going to kind of leave it up to you to figure out which one's which. So, my first story. On June 21st, 1967, I joined a migration of 100,000 fellow hippies on the road to the Summer of Love, 1967, in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco. We were on a mission to promote social change, environmental awareness, and communal living. It was kind of a nice bonus that there would be groups like Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Jimi Hendrix. We were excited about that too. So on that day, my parents dropped me off along the freeway on-ramp in Seattle, Washington to Highway 5. Now, there were about 10 other hippie brethren, men and women, sitting alongside the road with their thumbs out. So I joined them. Before long, we were passing around some really sweet smelling doobies. We brought out the Mad Dog 2020 wine, T-Bird wine, and Boone's Farm, of course. I had a rock and roll band and I played saxophone. So I had brought my saxophone with me. People brought out tambourines, little drums. One woman had a flute, and we just had a great time. We didn't even care if we got a ride. Well, within 2 hours, we had all secured a ride. I had one of the most amazing hitchhiking rides in my life, because we did a lot of hitchhiking back in those days. It was with a Basque sheep herder from Spain who was driving down to about 30 miles south of Portland, Cottage Grove area, to pick up a covered wagon, team of horses, a flock of sheep, and meet with 3 of his Basque sheepherder buddies who flew in from Spain to take those sheep all the way up through up to Mount Hood for the summer and then come back grazing. That's what he was hired to do. He had many interesting stories that I could tell you about, but it will be a little bit too long for this particular program. He dropped me off alongside the road, and there were about 8, 9 other hippies down there hitchhiking just like everybody else. And we started to get out the paraphernalia, but within 5 minutes, this Ryder truck pulled up next to us, and these 2 long-haired hippie guys got out, and they came up to us and they said, "Hey, we can take all of you in the back of this truck. I'm sure you're going down to the Haight." And we said, "Great." So we went to the back of the truck and they rolled up the back, and this wonderful smoke just came out and enveloped us of marijuana. And when we could see through the haze, there were about 12 fellow hippies, men and women, that were either naked or in their underwear. Now, I'm 21 years old, so I'm thinking, orgy. All right, orgy. My first orgy ever. Well, we all jumped in right away, started taking off our clothes like everyone else. And the reason was not because there was going to be an orgy, but because it was 90 degrees outside and the back of that truck was like an oven. Well, we did smoke a few doobies, and before long, most of us were either passed out or getting ready to check out. There were a couple guys that I wasn't even sure if they were breathing. But within a couple hours, the truck pulled into a truck stop to get some gas. And when they opened the back, there were 22 of us now in the back of this. 15 people threw on their clothes and went, "See you later. This is too hot for us. We can't handle this." I immediately ran up to those truck drivers and I said, "Hey, listen, guys. I work construction in Seattle. I can drive any kind of a rig. I can drive all the way to the Haight-Ashbury, and you guys can just sleep, take it easy, do whatever you want to do." I said, "Sure, fine, no problem." Of course, I had a little help with some Black Beauty speed, but I drove all the rest of the way. 5 people stayed in the back of that truck, and every couple hours I would stop just to open the back and give them some fresh air. Well, I don't know if any of you were ever at the Summer of Love in 1967 at the Haight-Ashbury, but when I drove in to the Haight, it was paradise. There were bikers, there were hippies, there were drug dealers, there were gangs, musicians, and thousands of onlookers. But I had it made because I got to know those truck drivers, and they had a pad down on the Haight because they had brought with them 20 pounds of marijuana and 10 pounds of hashish, which they were going to be selling throughout the Summer of Love. And they invited me to stay at their pad, sleep on the floor, no problem. I didn't really have much in the way of money. I think I had about $25. So I would go down in the morning and busk on the side of the road with my saxophone. And I met this gorgeous female singer from Brazil and this guitar player from Australia. And we formed a little group and we got nice tips that whole 2 months that we were there. And it gave us enough money to eat and go to the greatest concerts you can ever imagine. Janis Joplin, Grateful Dead, the Jefferson Airplane. It was just unbelievable 2 months. Well, you know, it was paradise, but paradise ended shortly after that Summer of Love because, once again, too many people, lots of drugs, criminal activity going on, and then the drug dealers' heroin use came up in the Haight, and everything fell apart. But that was way after I was there. But the coolest thing for me was that I met people from all over the world. I met backpackers from Bulgaria, South Africa, China, Thailand. I mean, it was just amazing. For me, a boy that was raised in Seattle in the white suburb, I only knew my own people. I never had met other people from different walks of life and ethnic groups. It was just an amazing experience, and I really learned a lot. And I got my voice there too, because I was going to the University of Washington at the time, and when I came back, I had a voice, and I got involved in protest movements and other kinds of marches for Dr. Martin Luther King. But probably the highlight of the whole experience was that I and the 2 drug dealer truck driver folks got a private concert by Jimi Hendrix when he came up to exchange playing for some good marijuana and hashish. And that's my story.
Whoa.
Okay, so the next story I'm going to share with you involves working at a preschool as a preschool teacher from 1977 to 1984 while I was getting a master's degree in child development at a local private college called Pacific Oaks. I was living in the San Fernando Valley, and the college was out in Chatsworth area, for those of you who know. It's kind of the west side, or the east side of the San Fernando Valley. I had summers off, So I have this adventure spirit. So I had designed a trip to drive my Datsun B210 from Los Angeles to Nova Scotia without getting on a freeway. I did that trip. There was one freeway that I got on. It was a New York Turnpike to get around New York City up into some of the back country. I mean, I had just some of the most amazing experiences. And when I got to Nova Scotia, I took the ferry up to the Greenland, and then from there I came across to Labrador. And in Labrador, this is the end of my trip, the end of my beginning trip, there was a 23-mile road, and you could go from the town that you came into in Labrador about 10 miles, and then you hit gravel the last 13 miles up to a Tlingit Native American community. And that was the end of my trip because I was going there to taste gooseberry pie. That was the motivation for the whole trip. You can see from my belly, I need that kind of motivation. Well, if you've never had gooseberry pie, you'll be in for a treat if you get a chance. So there were so many adventures on this trip, but my first stop was in Missouri, in the Missouri Ozarks. I met two of my Army buddies from the Vietnam War area when we served, were drafted together. I met them, and they were going on a canoe trip down the Missouri Ozarks into the Arkansas Ozarks. Now, I had never canoed, but I grew up in Seattle. I had my own rowboat and then an outdoor boat for a while, and it was beautiful to go up in the San Juan Islands in Washington with my parents. So I knew a lot about boating as well as sailing. I had done quite a bit of that, but I'd never been in a canoe, and I was so excited to see Ken and Loy because they were expert canoeists. They had won competitions. Ken was raised in the upper lakes of Michigan. Loy was raised in southern Illinois, went out in the Mississippi a lot. I mean, I was really looking forward to this. So we camped out the first night, and then the next day, Ken and I were going to take the canoe down through the Missouri Ozarks into the Arkansas Ozarks. And once we got there, Loy was going to meet us by this bridge, and we were going to camp out for the night, and then Loy and Travis would go the rest of the way where the rapids were a lot more intense. The first part was supposed to be fairly easy with some minor rapids. So we're getting ready to go. Ken and I are getting our gear, putting them in waterproof bags, and Loy's got the canoe down at the river, and I hear, "Help! Help!" And we run down there, and Loy is swimming after the canoe as it's floating down the river. I started thinking, do these guys really know what they're doing? But Loy got the canoe, brought it back up, and Travis said, "Okay, let's go, man. I'll be in back, you be in front. I'm going to be yelling you commands when we get into any rapids, because they can be very loud, so I'm just going to be screaming, power left, power right, and you just do that." Okay, so we come around the first bend, and Travis looks at the rapids ahead, and he went, "Oh my God. I thought this was on the lower part. This is a class 4 rapid." I said, "Okay, well, let's turn back. Maybe Loy hasn't left yet." And he went, "Too bad, we're going, we're going to do it. You just got to listen to me." So we got into the rapids, and as we got into the rapids, I hear, "Power left." So I dug my oar in, and I powered as hard as I could. Ken's back there steering. But one thing he forgot to tell me was that when you do that, you have to sit up straight in the canoe and power with your arms, not lean over. I didn't know that. He hadn't told me that. So the canoe went like this, like this, like this. All the gear fell out. My paddles floating down the river. Travis was skilled enough to get us through the rapids. And then we took us about an hour. We got all our gear, got the paddle, and we continued down the river. And I don't know if you've been in the Ozarks before, but they are gorgeous. I mean, you're out in the wilderness, cool bird sounds, and every once in a while you'd come around a family that was picnicking for the day, and the kids had made a rope swing, and they would swing out from this tree and flip out into the river. We joined them, of course, and we did some bass fishing along the way, caught some good-sized bass, and actually cooked those up while there. We had a little cook stove, and the rest of the day was just amazing. And it was about 6 o'clock when we pulled into this bridge area, and Loy was there waving us over, and we brought the canoe up on shore. Loy tied it off, and he said, "Man, I found this great plateau to camp out tonight. It's about a quarter-mile hike, but it's amazing." So we hiked up to this plateau, set up camp. It was really warm out. We didn't even need a tent, so we just laid in our sleeping bags. And that night was the first time that I had ever seen a meteorite shower. And I don't know if any of you have seen that, but it's just stars shooting everywhere. And I went, oh my gosh, this is like being in a movie theater. It's just unbelievable. So the night went well. We woke up the next day, and the plan was, Ken and Loy were going to continue down the river for the full day. I was to drive Loy's truck to his buddy's house in a little holler that had about 30 people in it, and I was supposed to see his good buddy, Bubba. Well, I did that. It took me about an hour and a half to get down there, and I pulled in, and there's Bubba, this big gorilla of a guy, and he comes up, "Hey man, I hear you're Ed, and you know, we're gonna have a nice feast tonight, you know, when Loy and Travis roll in. Everyone from the holler, all 30 of us are gonna show up. We're bringing grits and greens and great desserts, but you and I have to supply the fish, and there's plenty of bass in this fish, but I've got to go to work. So, do you know how to fish?" Do I know how to fish? I am known in California as the world's best, most proficient bass fisherman. I can catch anything. I can catch whatever you need for tonight. And he said, "All right. Well, I got a bass boat. You know how to do that?" "Yeah." And he showed me a couple spots to fish for bass. And I went, "Okay, great, fantastic." So he took off, and I headed out, gave me enough bait. In 1 hour, I had caught enough 10 good-sized bass, and I had them in my cooler, but I was out of bait. And 10 bass or 33 people definitely wouldn't work. So I headed on down, back up the river a ways, and I'm looking for some bait. And I see this frog on a log. And I'm going to get me that frog and cut that up for bait, because I know bass will eat frogs. So I come over to this rock, and I'm ready to grab that frog, but I realize it's not moving. And the reason it's not moving is because it's in the mouth of a poisonous cottonmouth snake. But I'm determined I am going to get me that frog. And I'm young, I'm strong, and I knew I could get that. So I reach over and I grab that snake, and if you hold a snake, the jaws, if you can really grip it, it can't bite you. So I ripped out that frog, I threw it in my bait bucket, and then I'm just going to throw the snake into the river. one thing you don't know about me is sometimes I don't think really clearly about things, think them through, because that snake was going like this all over the place. And there's no way I'm going to let that snake go in front of my face. But another thing you don't know about me, but you'll soon find out, is I'm a very clever kind of fellow. So I reach down into the boat and I screw off the lid to my 5th of Jack Daniel's whiskey that I always carry. And I brought that up and I poured a shot right down the gullet of that snake. And the snake's eyes rolled back in its head. It went limp, and I flipped it into the river. Well, I cut up that frog, and within, well, hour, 2 hours, I had caught 10 more bigger bass. Now I had 20 bass. But, you know, I figured we need a little bit more than that. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, I'll look around for a frog. And all of a sudden, you're going to find this hard to believe, because I even find it hard to believe. I look down, and there's that cottonmouth snake with a big bullfrog in its mouth. And it looks up at me, and it looks down at that 5th of Jack Daniels. Looks up at me, looks down at that 5th of Jack Daniels. And the other thing you'll learn about me is that sometimes I'm kind of slow on the uptake, but I finally figured it out. But I'm not about to trust that snake. So I grab that snake in a grip, and the snake is just limp. It spits that bullfrog into my bait bucket. And I take that 5th of Jack Daniels, I unscrew the lid, I give it 3 shots. Chew, chew, chew. And the snake has this great grin on its face. Its eyes roll back, and I just drop it into the river. Well, I cut up that frog, and I caught 10 more bass that keep getting bigger and bigger along with this story. Well, we had an amazing cookout. I met some very interesting people that lived in the Ozarks, Bubba and his friends. And then I did my whole trip, like I told you, up into Labrador. When I came back, I live in Davis, and some of you from this area probably know where Rio Vista is. And every year they have a bass fishing contest in Rio Vista in October. So I've entered it, but I've never won it. And if you win it, you get $500 and a plaque with your name down with all the other winners from all the different years down at the docks. So I'm fishing this year. I got, okay, frogs. I had a frog. I cut it up. I was fishing. It was the last day. And they announced the weights of the frogs. They got people, that, or the bass that come around. And they announced my name. Ed Lewis, largest bass of the week, 22 pounds. I'm going, all right, I'm going to win. Yay, fantastic. Then about a minute later, oh, Susie Claren, 24-pound bass. I'm going, oh my God, I really wanted to win this once. I thought I had the trick. And then you're going to find this part really hard to believe, because I kind of do too. I felt this little nudging alongside my leg, and I looked down, and there's that cottonmouth snake with the big bullfrog in his mouth. And I know you probably find that hard to believe, because that snake had to go all the way over the Rockies, over the Sierras, down into the Sacramento River. They must have some kind of scent like salmon do right to me. Unbelievable. And then the cutest thing ever, this little, or well, kind of petite female snake came right up next to him. I assume it was his wife. She had eyebrows, eyelashes that came up, curled up, and on the end of each eyelash was a silver bass scale. She had a nice stripe down her back. I mean, she was gorgeous. And, you know, at that time I kind of wished maybe I was a snake. Well, and next to her came these 2 little toddler snakes with little teeny frogs. They were the cutest, little boy and girl snake. And they all spit their frogs into my bait bucket. And of course, I had to reward them. I took my pan, I poured the whole fifth of Jack Daniels right into that pan, and they came up and swam around. Now, before you judge the parent snakes letting their little toddler snakes come in and drink whiskey, you don't know what snake etiquette is. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do. So, kind of keep your judgments aside a little bit. Well, I cut up those frogs, and within an hour, I had caught a 28-pound bass. And if you don't believe me, you just go down to Rio Vista, because I won it that year, and you'll see Ed Lewis, 1983 winner, 28-pound bass. And if any of you ever want to go fishing with me, I know how to get the best bait. And I got one of the best friends in the world to help me do that. Thank you.
Very good. Well done, Ed.
All right. Thank you, audience, for listening. And it's been fun telling you. See if you can figure out which one is the tall tale, because one of them's true, one of them's the tall tale.